Just fantasy baseball. We're back. I'm your host, Colby Olson, joined as always by Clay Snowden. What's going on, man? Today we're going to be talking more pitchers. Last week we went through top 10, then we did 11 through 20. And now we're kind of moving beyond talking about just purely studs, right? We're moving beyond ADP 100. This episode, we're going to be talking about ADP 100 to 250. And Clay and I are each going to be bringing, Clay's bringing 4 pitchers. I have 6 pitchers. So in total, we're giving you 10 pitchers in today's episode that we're really confident about going into 2022. And they're kind of spread all around. So I have a few guys that are, ADP 150 to 200. I have a few that are 200 to 250. And guys that I genuinely believe, Clay, that there's some diamonds in the rough here that I think could be aces on your team. There's a lot of good pitching depth on the board right now.
Yeah, and you'll see with the players I picked, there's a couple of kind of bounce back candidates and a couple that I think could take a step forward. And that's really what you find in this range, right? You often find those bounce back candidates, somebody who's proven it in the past and looking for a rebound, or you're finding second year players, rookies, things like that, these players are not quite proven who they actually are yet. And there could be more in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, man, you've already teed yourself up there. Give me your first guy.
Well, these are in no particular order, by the way, or at least my list isn't. But
I'm going to go, if you do want to do an order, I'm going to go from earliest to latest, go by ADP, if that makes sense.
I think I'll be able to do that off my head with these guys, but correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. But my first one's Logan Webb. 2.90 ERA last year, 3.59 expected ERA with a 3.03 FIP. Logan Webb had a fantastic year 2 years ago and really, bursted onto the scene, and everyone thought this could be the next ace for the Giants, or, he was looking like he was on that trajectory. Obviously not a bad year last year, but I don't think it met expectations for what a lot of people had. Is that fair to say, Colby?
I think that's more than fair to say. It's I was writing up the top 30 pitchers article on justbaseball.com, which you guys can go read. That's not for fantasy. That's just in general. And when I was writing them up, I basically said it's rare that a guy has a 2.9 ERA, and it almost felt disappointing.
Yeah. And when you look at it, his advanced metrics were a little bit down from from 2021. Still a guy who's around a 57% ground ball rate, does not give up a ton of home runs. Those are the type of pitchers I'm often going to target because I know that their floor is usually a solid option. He may not develop into one of my 2 or 3 best starting pitchers on my team, but he's not going to be my worst either. He's not going to be killed by the long ball, right? And he really doesn't throw the fastball anymore, which is something that
four seam. He's sinker,
right. Sorry, yeah. So he goes sinker, slider, changeup for the most part with good movement. Still a really good pitcher, and like I said, I think he has a high floor. And the ceiling, what do you think his ceiling is?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the ceiling is Cy Young. He could win a Cy Young award, and I actually picked him and Julio Urias to win the Cy Young award last year. There was almost nobody higher on Logan Webb, I don't think, going into 2022 than me. And that, I think that's why I almost have this personal, feeling that it was almost a little bit of a disappointment because you look deeper, not even deeper at first, right? Let's just go to K percentage. 26.5% K rate in 2021. Then it dropped last year to 20.7%. But if you go deeper on a pitch by pitch basis in 2021, the thing that was so exciting about Logan Webb was one, the sinker and changeup combination was a ground ball machine. And that's still apparent, a 56% ground ball rate last year, a 60% ground ball rate in 2021. I mean, he's getting more ground balls than just about anybody not named Framber Valdez. The weird thing, and I don't know if this is maybe having to do with him, this is kind of his second season with this slider. I don't know. His slider whiff rate in 2021 was 47%, which would put him at the near the top of whiff rate by just about any pitch in baseball, right? We talked about Spencer Strider's slider a couple episodes ago, and his slider had a 49% whiff rate. Like, it was right there with a pitch as good as Spencer Strider's slider in 2021 at 47% whiff rate. Last year, the slider dipped in whiff rate down to 31%. So, 31% is solid, but really like an elite pitch by whiff rate would usually be towards 40%. So I think it's for him, it's refinding that slider that was just so effective in 2021 and was less effective and really led to a dip in strikeout rate. But I think that's something he could find again too.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's the number one on my list so far. I want to hear your number one because I think I know who it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm going to be kind of like skipping over like I do love Logan Webb. I love Nick Lodolo. Like I think that might be a guy you're going to bring up too. So I'm excited to hear you talk about him. And this is a guy that I love. I'm kind of going a little deeper down the list here to start, Clay. Chris Sale is such an intriguing option for me in fantasy this year because the upside, this is a pure upside bounce back play that I am so in love with. Not only because, firstly, he's looked amazing in spring training, and it's so incredibly hard to like put that much emphasis on, a few spring training innings. But if there's anybody that you could get really excited about some really good spring training innings, it's Chris Sale, because he's thrown just 48 innings in the last 3 seasons, right? Didn't pitch in 2020, then came back for just, 42 innings in 2021. He gets Tommy John surgery. Then he comes back last year. Like, this guy must have pissed off the baseball gods. The baseball injury gods just have it out for Chris Sale, right? He comes back from Tommy John surgery and immediately gets hit by a comebacker, breaks his finger in his second start, but then it gets worse from there. Chris Sale decides that he wants to go on a nice bike ride, because who doesn't like to go on a nice bike ride when you've broken your finger? And he falls off his bike and breaks his wrist, putting him out for the season. So he only threw 5.2 innings last year. But actually, like, Clay, I think that's honestly a little bit of a good thing, right?
Yeah,
the guy's only thrown
fresh.
48 innings in 3 years. His arm has to be feeling amazing right now. So I'm very excited. He's been up to 95 miles an hour in spring training. I think he could work up as he builds up to 96, 97 at times. In 2021, he was only sitting at 93.8. So if he's like really sitting 94 to 95, still has that great slider. He varies arm angles. He's always been an amazing command pitcher. And then he gets a lot more ground balls than he used to. He's actually like very similar to Nick Lodolo in a lot of respects. And so at ADP 145, you're getting him after guys like Lodolo and Hunter Green and George Kirby and those types of pitchers. So I'm like really bought in on Chris Sale as like a go-to insanely high upside play.
Yeah, and he has just nasty stuff. And we've seen it, how good he can be. That, as you mentioned, less than 50 innings across 3 seasons is a blessing and a curse, especially someone who's getting up there in age. Maybe that will help him. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to. So when you say fall off his bike, for some reason, my immediate reaction was like, he's at a stop sign and lost balance, like complete idiot move. I'm sure it wasn't that, but like picturing that just makes it even more funny to me.
I mean, it really could have been. I don't know. I mean, I remember people putting Chris Sale's face over the video of Joe Biden falling on his bike.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
the funniest video. Oh my god! But anyways, yeah, Chris Sale, super high upside option, and I don't see like a downside to it really. I think he's going to be back and be Chris Sale. Maybe not the Chris Sale we saw in 2018, right? Like, he is up there in age now a little bit more, but he's still Chris Sale. Yeah.
Speaking of upside, my next player has a lot of upside. And that's Lucas Giolito. And this is a guy last year that it just about could not have gone worse for him. I mean, I guess it could have, but when you compare to how he has been, last year, 4.90 ERA, 4.06 FIP, K under 10 per 9 for the first time in a few years. The walks crept up. I mean, everything was bad. The metrics, the advanced metrics were much, much worse as well. Dealt with a little bit of an injury. I believe it was like a abdominal strain or something earlier in the year, and I just don't know if he was right. When you have 3 straight years like he had that were good to plus years in a row, and then you come in and do a stinker in 2022, I'm going to bet on the bounce back here because we've seen in the past 4 years a lot more good baseball and good pitching from Lucas Giolito than bad. I think that you can take advantage of last year's down season and still get him at a reasonable price. And I would be willing to bet those metrics will be better. Again, I'm going off of just playing the percentages. 3 years of a good pitcher. I don't think he just all of a suddenly lost it. He's not 35 years old, he's not Lance Lynn, a teammate who you could say, oh, maybe he's getting up there in age and whatnot. Like Lucas Giolito, and I believe he's in a contract year.
I mean, if anything, he's like entering his prime years.
Yeah. Like I'm all aboard. I'm all aboard here. And I plan on drafting him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the downside here, Clay, because you brought up the consistency that he showed from 2019 to 2021. And I was very high on Giolito coming into 2022 as well because of that consistency, right? He had an ERA between 3.4 and 3.5 in 3 years straight. And then it just ballooned last year. Yeah, I don't really see like the big reason for it either. So I think there's some bad luck mixed in there. Maybe something was off. He was trying to find something throughout the year, but like just from a price point basis, right? You're getting Chris Sale and Lucas Giolito right around the same spot. Right around guys like Freddie Peralta. And Freddie Peralta for me is a guy that I'm going to be staying away from because I just can't trust the health at this point. It's a guy that's burned me one too many times, and I just don't think that it's the year. Clay, I do want to ask, this isn't a guy that I'm like, Kyle Wright. What's your opinion on Kyle Wright?
I have no idea. I avoided him because I really do not know if I'm buying into it or not. Like I should, right? All signs point to like, he very well could be on any of these lists, but I'm just electing to go with different people for some reason. This might just be a gut feeling thing. Like I just don't know what to think of him fully, so I'm just a little hesitant.
Yeah, I'm hesitant too. I mean, the funny thing is, in the second half last year, like the numbers don't look great. 3.58 ERA with a 3.95 FIP. But then you dig in a little further, and like he really just had 2 blow-up starts, a 6 earned run start and an 8 earned run start. And the 8 earned run start, Clay, guess who it was against?
I have no idea.
It was against Oakland. It was against the Athletics. He gave up 8 earned. Unreal.
My team.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm in or out on Kyle Wright, but I just wanted to bring it up and because it kind of caught my eye. He's right around that area as well. I also like Joe Ryan. I didn't bring him up either, but I like Joe Ryan. Clay, I'm gonna move on to my next guy though. We're moving down a tier here. ADP 165 is where you can get Luis Garcia. And Luis Garcia, one, is still very young. He's going to be entering his age 25 season. He has back-to-back seasons of 150 innings or more.
Time out. I'm sorry. He's only 25 years old?
Yeah, man.
It just seems he's another one of those players who just seems older, doesn't he?
He's 26, actually. I'll correct myself. He's 26.
I would have guessed he's like 29.
Exactly, right? Totally one of those guys that you think he's 29 or 30 because, he came up and was good immediately.
Yeah.
Again, 2 back-to-back seasons of 150 innings or more. Over that span, I think he has a 3.6 ERA with a 3.78 FIP. So like, nothing really that good. And you're probably wondering like, really? Like this is the guy at ADP 165? But there's so much upside here for Luis Garcia, in my opinion. One thing I really like, and I'm curious to see how this plays out, is that Luis Garcia has to change his windup now. I don't know if you're listening to this and maybe you've never watched Luis Garcia. He used to do this windup that he had nicknamed the Rock the Baby, and it would take 10 seconds long, and it was ridiculous, and it was a distraction to hitters. But actually, I think it could be a distraction to himself. Right now, he's had to simplify his mechanics, simplify his windup, actually makes you focus more on the batter and focus more on, just executing the pitch. Now, going a little deeper into his repertoire and ways that he could perform better, right? The problem with Luis Garcia, and I brought this up last year when on Not Gambling Advice, is he throws his mediocre fastball way too much, right? If Luis Garcia developed to be more of like a Joe Musgrove type player where like he's throwing his slider 25%, he's throwing his curveball 25%, he's mixing in that cutter, mixing in that fastball, that would be a lot better because right now he's throwing his fastball 42, 43% of the time, but it's getting hit really hard. But his curveball and slider and cutter are good pitches that he just needs to throw a little bit more. So I'm betting on one already a very high ceiling, and I'm expecting him to throw more innings this year. He's going to be leaned on more. But I also think that he's like right on the cusp of a breakout. Like this is a guy that has a lot of upside and really could take that next step this year.
He's also a guy that I just don't see like going completely south. Like these are the type of players you can also bet on. Like I said with my first pick, Logan Webb. Like I don't see Luis Garcia falling off a cliff here. Like I think he'll put up a respectable ERA, even if he doesn't turn out to reach his ceiling this year. I love that pick. Struggles a little bit with that home run ball from time to time. I want to see what the mechanics are because I noticed that right away when I started seeing that on Twitter
It
during
looks
spring
good.
training. It looks good.
good.
It does. And I wonder if that's going to be positive or negative. I don't
I
know
really
once
think
it
it's positive.
actually happens. But it's going to be fun to watch.
I think it's gonna be a positive for. I genuinely think it's gonna be a positive for a lot of guys. Actually, like you're just gonna see a lot of guys like I've talked about with Carlos Rodon, where they just get the ball back and they're right at the hitters again. And I think it actually might have a little bit of an advantage towards the pitchers because the hitters have less time to think about what is this guy gonna throw to me. The pitchers just have to execute the pitch. The hitters are thinking more.
Well, my next pitcher, Cincinnati Red Nick Lodolo, a rookie last year with a 3.66 ERA, 3.90 FIP, 11 and a half strikeouts per nine. Over 55% ground ball rate throughout the minors and a 46% ground ball rate last season. Great movement on his pitches. In my opinion, he's the best pitcher the Reds have right now. Right now. Hunter Green, he's also a special pitcher, but Nick Lodolo just has it all in my opinion. I mean, has an interesting arm slot and he comes in from the left side and he's not afraid to attack hitters at times. And I just love the trajectory that he's on right now. And a lot of people say, oh, well, he's in Great American Ballpark. Like, is he going to give up home runs? Like, no, he pitches to a lot of ground balls and will still get you productive strikeout numbers. So I'm not even worried about the Great American Ballpark effect as much with him as I would be with a guy like Hunter Green, right? Now, the Reds are probably not going to win a ton of games, but Nick Lodolo, I mean, I think that there's a step that he takes this season, and he continues to prove that he might be the ace of this staff in the future.
Yeah, I mean, what a two-headed monster with him and Hunter Green. I've been a big Nick Lodolo fan for a long time. Have long held him in dynasty leagues and now finally reaping the benefits of that. But what makes Nick Lodolo so good is that I call it a slider. Baseball Savant has it designated as a curveball. I mean, call it what you want. It moves a ton. Had a 46% whiff rate on that curveball last year, threw it 30% of the time, gets a ton of whiffs on. I mean, hitters just hit 136 against it last year. Like it was a ridiculously good pitch. The four-seam fastball performed at a high level. The sinker and changeup is actually kind of what hurt him last year, Clay. Do you see for him taking the next step with that changeup? He threw it 10% of the time and he threw it a lot to righties. Like he is confident in that pitch, but is that a pitch that he has like more development in the tank for? Because I think if he can get that, if he can throw that changeup just a little bit more, and refine that pitch a little bit more, that's kind of for me what's going to take him to the next level where he doesn't have to rely so much on the four-seam fastball curveball mix.
Yeah, and if he can get that changeup going and start relying on it more, like you said, that pitch mix will just help him so much, and it's going to improve his other pitches off of it, right? So I don't know how much he's been throwing it in spring. I've only watched one of his starts so far, and I need to go back and look through that. But it's definitely something to watch this season. And I mean, what do you think his ceiling is for this year? Do you
Well, I
think he's
think
a
that's the advertise. That's a tough way. That's the
yeah
tough thing to gauge with him, right? Like he's going. His price point right now is right around ADP 136. You might be able to get him a little bit lower than that, depending. But that's the thing, Clay. Like his upside this year, I don't know how many innings he throws. Like he threw 115-ish innings last year. And, I think he gets to 150, but that's the question. He's had health concerns. That's my
yeah
one thing that's holding me back from loving him even more and being like, all right, push all the chips in. This guy is a future ace. Because when he's on the mound, he's going to be an ace. But there are injury concerns, and he does play in a bad ballpark, which is probably the only thing that I would, yeah. But it's hard to predict injuries. Again, very hard. So yeah, I'm in on Nick Lodolo. I'm a very big fan. All right, I'll move on to a couple guys here, Clay. I'm gonna do these back to back, and then I'll move on to you because they're going at the same price point, but they're very, very different. So Brady Singer and Kodai Senga, and these are two guys that I actually brought up when I went on the Just Baseball show and talked about pitchers that I like going into the 2023 fantasy baseball season. So, if you already listened to the Just Baseball show, you might have already heard this, but it's great to reiterate it. And Brady Singer is the first guy that I want to talk about because he kind of got shelled last night, which I think is actually a really good thing. He got shelled in the USA versus Mexico game. He gave up 4 earned runs, and it looks really bad on a small sample. And actually, that's the best thing for us, right? We're drafting. If people are seeing Brady Singer get rocked on one primetime game, that doesn't mean really anything because people are just still gearing up for the season. That might drop his draft stock just that little bit extra, like a round or two, and you get more value.
I
But the
love
reason
the way you think, man.
right? You got to take opportunity, man. You got to take
Colby can
opportunities.
find the positive in everything, and I like that.
Well, I think that's what spring training is, right? Like you almost have to like if somebody does something really good in spring training, that's awesome. If somebody does something really bad,
Yeah.
who cares because everybody's still gearing up for the season. Like it's such a raw point in the year. But last year Singer was really impressive. 25% K rate, 5% walk rate in the second half. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, gets a ton of ground balls, 50% ground ball rate. In the second half last year, Clay had 2.53 ERA and a 3.12 FIP. And that's including a blow up start in his last start of the season. The other thing I really like, the reason I love Brady Singer coming into this year, one, I just laid it out for you, right? Gets a good amount of Ks, doesn't walk a lot of guys, gets ground balls. But this is a guy that threw 153 innings last year and to me looks poised to throw 200. I think he's going to need to throw close to 200 innings for the Royals. And that is a very good strength. It's a high floor and even a high ceiling profile. Remember, this is a guy that was drafted in the top 10 at one time. Was it top 10?
I think he was 18th. Is that
18.
right?
Okay, he
I,
fell a
I
little
don't know
bit in
why
that
that
draft,
number came to
but
mind. I might be
I
wrong.
think it is 18. No, you got your photographic memory moving there, but yeah, Singer is a very high floor profile that you can grab here. And it's almost a guarantee. Like nothing's a guarantee, right? But like if he stays healthy, like he should throw 190, 200 innings. So I'm very excited about him coming into this year.
Yeah, and he's going to be a starter. He's going to be in the front of their rotation. A guy who they tried in the bullpen very briefly at I believe the beginning of last year, and but like you said, can produce ground balls. He does give up a little bit of home runs here and there, but overall, a guy that I think that this is the year that he takes that step forward. I think he's got his confidence back and he's ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does give up hard contact, but like I kind of can look the other way when you're giving up hard contact that's mostly on the ground. Like yeah, he might give up, his home run per fly ball rate has been consistently between 13 and 15%. But at the same time, like the biggest adjustment he made last year was he stopped walking guys. And if you're not going to walk guys, you're going to get ground balls and enough strikeouts for me. Really, really high floor here for Brady Singer. So I might give it a hot take here, Clay, but why draft Lucas Giolito when you can just draft Brady Singer?
It's one man's opinion, I guess.
I mean, really, they were basically like I talked about Lucas Giolito, but he was between a 3.4 and a 3.5
Yeah.
ERA for
And
three straight years.
to answer your question, I think some people would rather go with Giolito just because he has, I guess, a longer track record of proving it.
A longer track record of not being as good as Brady Singer last year is what I'm hearing, because Brady Singer actually had a lower ERA.
1 year.
So what? He's only been in the league for 3 years. I am going to stand by that. If you're thinking of drafting Lucas Giolito, just wait for Brady Singer. Okay. Oh, I said I was going to bring up two guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Kodai Senga. All right, this will be a quick one because Kodai Senga could be a top 10 fantasy pitcher this year. Like, I don't know. His upside is crazy high. Coming over from Japan last year, he had a 1.94 ERA, 156 strikeouts, and only 27 walks in 144 innings. So realistically, like, he could throw 170 innings. I don't think he's going to have a 1.94 ERA coming over to the States. But to me, a guy that's going ADP 185 with a nasty splitter, crazy stuff. Like, it seems like a ton of upside here at the price. And that's the sell. That's the entire sell.
That you covered it right there, right? You know, a high-priced free agent being brought over, and I just don't really know what to think about that. I struggle with when the pitchers come over from playing overseas and they come in, and I just don't really know what to think about them often. And you know, it might be worth it, and I guess we'll see, man. I don't know though. It's just hard to say. There's so many
What's the
cases where it
downside,
works.
though? Well, like, I know you're saying I don't know, but like, genuinely, what is the downside here?
It doesn't work. It doesn't translate the success to the MLB, and you
But
draft a
why?
player.
Like, he has everything that should translate. Like, he's the best pitcher coming over from Japan since Tanaka.
Yeah, and like I said, there's signs pointing to it should. I just don't know because it's a risky game playing that.
Is it risky though? I think I don't think it is. I really think that this is like such a high. It's very high upside. So maybe there's
it is high upside.
But like, look at the guys going around him, right? Tony Gonsolin, Pablo Lopez, like Grayson Rodriguez. You want to talk about risk here? Like, oh my God, we're talking about a lot of guys with a lot of risk here, and Senga might have the most upside out of all of them this year.
Probably so.
So if you're going to be taking a pitcher amongst a bunch of pitchers with a lot of risk, you might as well maximize that upside. And that's the sell for Senga. But yeah, I'll let you get to your next guy.
Patrick Sandoval for the Angels is my guy. 2.91 ERA and a 3.91 expected ERA last year, a whole point higher. 309 FIP. Sandoval from the left side is a pretty interesting pitcher. And when you watch him, there's the games that you can see it and you'll be like, oh man, like this is a legitimately like good pitcher. And then there's other games where he's walking everybody, right? But he has a couple of great pitches as well with his ability to pretty much limit hard contact off the slider and changeup. But overall, like there are worries with him, right? And I'm going with the idea that this is going to be his third year of kind of being a more established everyday player in the rotation. And I think I'm willing to bet on it at his ADP and see if he can at the very least be a back of the rotation, quote unquote, on my team. But I still think that there's upside there.
Patrick Sandoval is a very interesting pitcher because he throws his slider as his primary pitch 29% of the time, a 33% whiff rate on that pitch. You know, a pitch that performed at a very high level last year. His secondary pitch is his changeup, which actually might be his best pitch. It is his best pitch. It's one of the best changeups in baseball. Had a 45% whiff rate last year on that pitch and a 51% whiff rate on his changeup in 2021. Like, this is a devastating pitch. He only throws it to right-handed batters. but a devastating pitch. The problem with Patrick Sandoval is that fastball. And like,
Yeah.
when you're throwing a fastball, even though he's only throwing it 23% of the time, last year that pitch had a 409 x WOBA, a 12.9% whiff rate. Like, nobody was missing that pitch. Everybody was on that four-seam fastball, and that was the big problem for him. But again, he might be learning from that. Hopefully he throws his sinker more, mixes in maybe that curveball a little bit more. But I think that's why when you look at his profile, the 2.91 ERA really stands out. A 3.09 FIP really stands out. But then you look and go, wait, where did this 3.91 expected ERA come from? And I think that does come from that fastball being just not a good pitch. And the other thing I'm skeptical of, Clay, do you see the home run per fly ball rate
It dropped
a little
like
bit?
more
Because
than 10%, right?
6.3% home run per fly ball rate last year, and he had never had a rate below 16% before that. So that's a
He's
little
figured it
concerning.
out, Colby.
But I'm not disagreeing with you here, because I think Patrick Sandoval, again, a lot of upside at ADP 211. And he has 2+ pitches that he uses a lot. It's just figuring out that fastball. It's like, how does he get away from that fastball? Maybe it's a cutter. Like, I think that's the key. And I don't mind drafting a guy with the hope that he makes a change like that.
Quick question. I don't want to get into breaking it all down, but of the Angels lefties with some upside, Reed Detmers or Patrick Sandoval, who would you rather draft at their ADP?
I mean, they're being taken like 10 picks apart.
Yeah.
Like, they're really being taken in the same spot. I mean, it's a tough one because Detmers last year looked really good at the end of the year.
Yeah. After he came back from the
And
minors, he looked
I
much
was
better.
like, oh man, I think I'm bought back in on Reed Detmers. Yeah, I'm bought in on Reed Detmers. Why not?
I like
And
it.
apparently Reed Detmers' stuff was up so far in spring training, up a couple
Yep.
ticks.
I saw
So
that
we'll
as
just have
well.
to see as that progresses. But yeah, I don't see any reason why not to take either. But yeah, shall I get into my next guy?
I think you have two left. Is that right?
I do. I have two left.
Take us home.
Oh, you have none. You're tapped out.
I'm tapped out.
Woo! All right. Clay said, "Let Colby cook, baby. Let him cook," and that's what we're gonna do. All right. Let's start with a guy that is a breakout candidate, a guy that's a bounce back. So first, we're gonna start with Hunter Brown, who is going to be a rookie this season. How many innings did he throw last year, Clay? I'm just pulling up his Fangraphs page real quick. Apologies here. All right. Threw 20 innings in the bigs last year, but actually primarily used as a reliever. And the similarities between the situation that he's in right now and the situation that Christian Javier was in last year at this time are eerily similar. I mean, eerily similar. This is also a guy that struck out. You go to his minor league stats in AAA last year, 31% strikeout rate. He came up and had a 27% strikeout rate. The stuff here is electric, right? The four-seam fastball is unhittable up in the zone. The curveball is a tumbler. And then he mixes in a slider as well. Four-seam fastball, curveball, slider. Like, very traditional mix here. The fastball is one of those invisibles, but he throws it very hard as well, up to close to 100. He had a 0.89 ERA in 20 innings in the bigs last year, Clay. A 1.98 FIP. Now, the biggest question mark with Hunter Brown is, will he enter the Houston Astros rotation? Because right now, if you look at the Houston Astros rotation, it's a tad bit clogged, but I'm going to tell you why it's not. Because it's the same reason I said Christian Javier is going to enter this rotation last year. Somebody is always going to get hurt in this rotation, and somebody already is. Lance McCullers is already dealing with forearm injury. Would not be surprised if that kept flaring up throughout the season. McCullers is a guy that's dealt with injuries time and time and time again, a guy that I'm staying away from in fantasy. But also, why would the Astros be incentivized to pitch Jose Urquidy more than Hunter Brown? To me, that doesn't make sense, right? Urquidy is not going to perform at a higher level than Brown, and I can put a ton of money on that if somebody wants to bet me on that. Hunter Brown is incredibly skilled, He threw 126 innings last year. If he can break into this rotation, which I think he almost certainly will, if not on opening day, if he's on the opening day rotation, he will certainly enter this rotation in the the first couple months of the season. So this is one of my biggest buys here at ADP, right around where Patrick Sandoval is being taken. There's so much upside here. He could be produce ace level stuff.
I think you covered it all, man. That was perfect.
What do you think? Like, are you bought in off that though? Like,
yeah, and again, this is gonna have to do with your league size, in my opinion. Like a 10-man league, I'm a little less hesitant just because there's so many good options that are available that if he's not in the rotation right away, I don't want to wait for that. Now, if it's a 15-man league like you and I played in last year, like I'm taking all kinds of players like that, right? But in terms of the actual skills, like there's no debate about it, right? He has the stuff to be an electric pitcher. It all just boils down to that opportunity and when he's going. I agree he's going to get it this year. Don't get me wrong, but when? How long into the season? And if you are somebody who's willing to be patient and you drafted a team that's kind of stacked and you can afford to take somebody who may not be in the rotation on opening day, then absolutely do it.
yeah, I mean, I see no reason why he won't be. Like, I think Lance McCullers is already injured, and like he's gonna flare up again. Hunter Brown's gonna find his way into this rotation. I can almost guarantee that. Don't like. Literally, what I would give you on that is don't make the same mistake if you didn't draft Christian Javier last year, right? Because you didn't think he was going to get in the rotation.
Yep.
Fantasy baseball is about drafting guys that can get you to the playoffs, but drafting guys that will be there to help you while you're in the playoffs. The first 2 months of the season in fantasy baseball are like more inconsequential than we think. I would say. Clay, the last guy that I'm going to bring up is a guy that I think I'll be in love with until I don't play fantasy baseball again or he retires. And he might cause me to quit fantasy baseball this year if he doesn't pitch well. Alex Cobb has got to put up a good season. And I don't know what he's done to the baseball gods, but in 2021, he had a 3.76 ERA. But that was backed up by a 2.92 FIP, but a 3.95 expected ERA. So there was some merit to that ERA being somewhat like deserved. Then in 2022, he goes to the Giants. Peter and I last year on Not Gambling Advice were all over Alex Cobb because we were so excited at him moving to a pitcher-friendly ballpark, the chance to, finally be the guy that, he was always painted to be, right? He changed as a pitcher in recent years. Started throwing a split finger, which he threw 42% of the time last year, with a 30% whiff rate, just a 244 batting average against. Nobody could hit that thing in the air, an average launch angle of 2 degrees. Then he also throws a sinker, which is really nasty pitch, an average launch angle of 1 degree. And he also has a curveball as kind of an out pitch with a 34% whiff rate on that pitch. Also performed at a high level. And so it was so confusing to me, Clay, how Alex Cobb pitched in the most pitcher-friendly ballpark in the league. He had a 3.15 expected ERA. He had a 2.8 FIP, a 2.89 expected FIP. He struck out more than 9 per 9. He walked less than 3 per 9. He got 61% ground balls against him. Like, the profile here is just screaming he must have had an amazing season. And yet he had a 3.73 ERA. And this was a guy that I bet on a ton last year. And I kept going, yep, this is the outing. Yeah. This is the outing where things turn around for Alex Cobb. And it just never did. He would have squeakers move through the infield. I'm excited for Alex Cobb this year because he's still going deep. ADP 230. Like, this is a guy you can get really, really deep. And to me, the floor is super high. I see him improving off what he did last year, where he threw 150 innings. If you're getting 150 innings I'm going to predict a 3.34 ERA. 150.
Yeah, and at that ADP, it's fantastic, right? That can help you in just about any league. He's not going to be the best pitcher on your roster, but right now with this type of value, we're kind of filling out the back end for a lot of players' leagues, right? And, Alex Cobb, as you've already painted the picture, had better underlying numbers last year than really what most people see at that 3.73. He's 35 years old, I believe now. I don't know if that has any worry to you. I typically have a lot of concern with that 35 and up age, but I think we've seen it proven time and time again recently that it's not as big of a deal.
Do you have something against old people?
I do, mostly because I'm getting closer and closer to that age every year, and it's I turned 30 this year, so right now I'm in my baseball prime, right? Like maybe hitting towards the out of it, but yeah. So Cobb, I like that pick a lot actually. I didn't really think about it much until earlier today, and you may have sold me on him.
I don't see, again, like I'm just, my entire strategy when it comes to fantasy baseball is, does this guy have upside and what is the downside? And for Alex Cobb, yeah, 35 years old, maybe he deals with injuries. He's dealing with a slight knee injury, but he threw a bullpen, and like maybe he deals with some nagging injuries. But again, at like this price point, if you can just give me 150 innings with a good ERA and like he has the profile is there. It's like Merrill Kelly or Alex Cobb. Who do we want here? And I think it's pretty obvious that I want Alex Cobb. Took a little shot at Merrill Kelly. Sorry, Merrill, if you're listening.
Yep.
Clay, I'm going to ask you one final question. And I think it's interesting. Maybe not a question. I'm just going to bring it up. It's interesting that none of us have brought up one Texas Rangers pitcher. Not one.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that really.
And I think it's for a reason. I don't think we need to go really into it, but like that Rangers rotation has the most risk with like honestly limited upside, in my opinion. Like I don't see a reason to draft anything any
I
of
have
those guys.
no
So that's
interest
kind of the
yeah,
finale of this episode.
and I think we both agree. I just don't have any interest in touching any of that, honestly.
But yeah, so that was our breakdown of ADP 100 to ADP 250. Next episode on Friday, we're going to be breaking down, maybe Thursday, actually, Clay. I think we're going to do a 3-episode week this week again. We got a lot of content to put up before the season. I know you guys need it because you're probably starting to do your drafts, either this next week or the week after. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Next time, yeah, we're going to be doing our deep sleepers, and then we're going to move on to relievers. So thanks for listening. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll catch you on Thursday and on Friday. Adios.